Here we are. It's the first presentation today. We've got the local support project, which I am presenting. Let's go on to the screen share. I've got some slides prepared. We're here at the AVConf, first one ever. It's 2018. Hopefully there'll be many more. Apologies in advance for my voice being a bit weak. But yes, let me talk about the local support project, which in summary is sort of a local charity and volunteering directory. It's the first project we ever had. In fact, it's a project that predates Agile Ventures itself. We had the massive open online class was running UC Berkeley. This is back in even 2011, 2012. And the professors of that class had, when they ran their face-to-face class, they would have the students doing projects with local charities in the Bay Area. And I was just really excited about that and thought, oh yes, they'll have that in their MOOC. And then they didn't. And so we got together with alumni from the 169 class, which is all about agile development and Ruby on Rails, and reached out to different charities. And so there was this group called Voluntary Action Harrow, who are in fact just up the road from me, who were talking about wanting a system. The original objectives were, they were thinking about people in the local area. This is Harrow is a borough in northwest London in the UK, and it's about 100,000 people. We're out in sort of Greater London, and so Voluntary Action Harrow Cooperative, as it's now called, are sort of an umbrella organization who are supporting other charities and non-profits in the Harrow area. And the original objectives, they really wanted to sort of thinking about members of the public who were searching for support groups, for example, individuals who maybe were having to care for an elderly or sick relative, and could they find, for example, the Alzheimer's support group or what have you. They were also hoping that it would allow charities and non-profits to find each other and discover synergies and so on. And we built an early prototype in Ruby on Rails and got that up. I'll talk more about the prototyping process in a moment. What became clear over the years, and it's now sort of 5 or 6 years that we've been doing this, was that it's very difficult to maintain a sort of a directory of the different charities and have those charities and nonprofits update the directory. We took an initial import from the government charity database, and then we took also information that the client had on charities in the local area. I think the big hope from the client was that the local charities would be up, keeping their details in the directory up to date so that people could find them. But that proved very difficult. I think it was usually pretty rare that anybody would update their details. It certainly did do that occasionally, but everybody being busy applying for new grants, trying to do their work. Some separate directory where, oh, you've got to update your details here for what benefit was it again? That was quite challenging. So over time, the objectives evolved into including other things which had been discussed at the beginning, but sort of originally had been secondary elements of the system, but became more primary elements. The big one was helping members of the public find volunteering opportunities in the local area, and the whole site's now pivoted towards that. We've also got one in the works to sort of advertise, provide sort of an events calendar for local charity events and so on. But one of the great things about local support is it does embody aspects of the agile process, which is of course what Agile Ventures is all about, which is having regular meetings with the client and regularly delivering working software so that the client can check, is it going in the right direction? Is it what we need? And so on. So we started with I've got a screenshot here of an early interactive prototype done in Google Sites when we'd originally just pulled out the data from the Charity Commission. This is like back in 2012. And we threw together, using a sort of like mashup system in Google Sites, all that information about charities, displaying on a map of Harrow to check that we were going in sort of the direction that the client wanted. Once we've got that kind of confirmed, I guess I've lost the original sketches that we did for them. But so you can see this is the once we got that early prototype approved, We built the system in Ruby on Rails. That's the software, of course, that everyone was using from the MOOC, and we had how it looks there, and that was it to start with. It was this way of presenting the information that was coming out of the Charity Commission. Over time, it evolved. We had lots of great people get involved who knew more CSS than myself, and made it look much nicer. This is how it currently looks, and that organizations directory has now become kind of a background page, and is not the homepage that you land on. You can see now for the main site that the main thing that we're displaying is the volunteering opportunities in the map of Harrow there, and we've got different icons, colors showing where those different volunteering opportunities are coming from. So I think I'm probably going to focus on talking about some of the data architecture and the technologies that we have. From I guess the data architecture, I think, is actually, to me, one of the most interesting parts of the system. I guess I'll talk about how it's aspects that are currently working and things that we would like to be automating. But so we have this, there are many charities, I think hundreds of them in our region that we're trying to serve, many much smaller non-profit organizations who are trying to help out. We would find that over the course of these few years, that despite our best efforts and the efforts of our clients, the local charities themselves would not spend a lot of time updating data through the interface that we created for them. But what they do is they do update their information into the Charity Commission for England and Wales, and they're actually required to do this if they're a national official charity, same as Agile Ventures. Then every year they must check in and get this up to date, or they stand in being sort of legal breach of their responsibilities as a charity. So the local charities do definitely update this information. We grabbed that data on a one-off basis initially, but because the Charity Commission doesn't provide kind of an API, it was a one-off. Things have changed there. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But what local charities also do is that they put their volunteering opportunities into various platforms. There are, I think both of these are national UK volunteering platforms. There's Do It and Reach. And so in order to get volunteer workers for their various needs, local charities are putting that information into there. Now, Do It and Reach both provide an API. Do It, a generic one; Reach one, they actually created one for us. And so we have these daily running jobs that run on Heroku, written in Ruby, reach out to the Reach Volunteering and the Do It APIs and pull that data in, and then pop that into our local database. So I've got the site here. So these different opportunities and so on here are all coming out of those different databases. And so we're kind of relatively guaranteed that the data about the volunteering opportunities in the local area is going to be up to date and fresh. And so that's we're tracking, the people clicking through on these, and actually that's we can see there's quite a lot of people using that information. It's a nice sort of little overview of the volunteer opportunities available in the area. So that side is all now working relatively smoothly and sort of powering the front of the site. The left-hand side here is more sort of a work in progress. As I say, we had originally taken, I think it wasn't even, originally database dumps were not available from the Charity Commission back in 2012. There was another site called, I think, opencharities.org that had somehow scraped the website and taken a dump of the data that we use as kind of the basis for populating the organizations in the system. But that quickly went out of date. Since then, the Charity Commission, they do now provide each month a database dump, and it's sort of in, I think it's a SQL Server format. But there are scripts, and I think actually we've got a separate project specifically on the Charity Commission, which Brent's been doing fantastic work on, which sort of now we've got updated scripts to pull the data out of there and wrap that in a REST API. And I've actually got over here, this is an example here of the RESTful API here, and how we can search for things in a particular postcode, and that gives us, that's all information coming out of the out of there. And so in principle, and we're doing this on a one-off basis at the moment. In principle, we can move to having monthly jobs that would make sure that the organization's data is completely up to date and always update and relevant and so on. So this is sort of work in progress. But yeah, this is the data architecture. And I think what we're seeing over time is we've really helped the client understand how the local charities are operating and moving more towards something that's going to help them. This is kind of, I think, the critical thing of Agile is that you build things, you put little things out there, and you see how people interact with it, and you produce a better and better system that kind of actually has an impact on how people are operating and go on over time. So yeah, I just mentioned, I mean, we've got various technologies in use. We're now on Ruby 2.5 and 5.1. Big thanks to Nico for helping us get upgraded there. We don't have a sort of a JavaScript framework on the front end. We just sort of have sprinkles. We have bits of jQuery in there. It's PostgreSQL on the back end. There is a big DevOps framework. We have Travis CI set up so that anybody who opens a pull request or anytime we merge one of those in, all of the tests that are written in Cucumber and Aspect, and I didn't include a logo for those, oh no, get run so that we can always see if the system is working. And then we have Heroku. We have this sort of pipeline through develop, staging, and production. So there's a whole DevOps side to it, which is requires management. I'd say some of the biggest challenges that we face are to do with Capybara JavaScript acceptance testing and so on in there, but usually we can get changes out to production pretty fast. What we would really like to move on to, actually, we do have I forget what it's called now, but there's I think Dependabot automatically updating our dependencies. We'd love to have continuous sort of deployment as well as continuous integration. Whenever anybody commits to develop and that gets merged, so pull request to develop gets merged, that will automatically go out to our develop server. But what we'd really love to have is a process whereby whatever was on the develop server, let's say at 6 a.m. every day, was moved onto the staging server, and whatever was on the staging server at say noon was moved onto the production server, just to keep up to date with all of the different libraries and their evolving churn, so to speak. So get involved. We have a team meeting every other Thursday at it's 10 a.m. UTC, where we sort of go over the project board and so on. We've got our local support channel in Slack. Jump in there, ask anytime. Like many projects in Agile Ventures, we've now got sort of a local support. There's a DevOps channel, there's an install channel, all these individual channels where you can ask. You might be thinking, oh, I don't want to interrupt the chat in the main local support channel because my question is related to the DevOps or it's to do with install. But yeah, so we've got the DevOps channel there and the install channel as well, and the notify channel as well. So lots of places you can ask questions. The entire thing is completely open source. All the source code up there on GitHub. The Pivotal Tracker is completely open as well. And yeah, I think that's about my 15 minutes. Thanks so much for listening to this little overview of our very first project, Local Support. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts or ideas about the project?
Yeah, Sam, this is Pat. What is your current approach or thoughts on dealing with your flaky tests, which bedevil almost all of these projects, I think?
Yeah.
Any ideas on what you might want to try in the future?
Yeah.
That you could try?
I mean, the things that we've got, there are a few kind of heuristics that we've got in place that have made them a little bit more manageable. I think John Morbacker originally came up with this approach on Travis CI. So we have a kind of a second run. So we have Cucumber runs all our tests, and some number of them may fail on an intermittent basis due to these whatever their timing issues or who knows what they are. What then happens is we immediately have a sort of a second run, and so any of those that failed on the first run are rerun, but just those. So let's say that 3 out of 500 failed. Those 3 will be rerun, and usually, often for the intermittent tests that are failing intermittently, they will run standalone. And so if then it passes on the second go, it just moves on. And so that's definitely made it more manageable. It's still not ideal. I mean, certainly if it fails both in batch and then isolation, that suggests to us that that's a more serious problem. So that's been I'm not completely comfortable with it, but it's one heuristic. Another one we've had is tagging certain tests, just like this is unreliable, and they can be excluded from the run fairly easily. But both of those are they feel like stopgaps rather than proper solutions. At the same time, we have this issue of, because of the continuous integration, we can't actually move things along the pipeline unless we can get green builds. So they do feel like necessary stopgaps just to allow us to deploy things. And as I say, yeah, this does affect a lot of our projects, and not just in the Ruby on Rails stack. We've got, for the Elixir Phoenix projects, it's the same thing with acceptance tests. I get the same thing working in Electron, in pure JavaScript, and so on. What I am tending to lean towards is away from acceptance tests and more towards a domain-driven approach, where we say, like in the ideal world, perfectly passing acceptance tests would be fantastic. But, if it takes this many hours, to get to them, then are they really worth it? I mean, I often have this experience of, like, it took 2 hours to actually get the feature working, but then 12 hours to get the acceptance test covering it, and even then, it's still like an intermittently failing one. So it kind of doesn't quite add up if it takes that long, and one wonders if, rather than 12 hours bashing one's head against the acceptance testing framework, could that 12 hours be better spent working really carefully on domain modeling to make sure that the code underneath is coherent, and that it sort of expresses what the client wants in terms of the client's language, and is then easy for another developer to come along and pick up and work with.
Yep, makes sense. It just seems like it's such a common problem, and everybody, those things you mentioned are kind of desperate measures. They are workarounds. They're not real fixes, but you do what you got to do. Just not to get too technical on this, but most of the problems, I think maybe all of these flaky tests on my side, have to do with where we're using JavaScript in concert with, of course, Rails on the back end and jQuery. Have you tried swapping out jQuery and go with vanilla JavaScript and see if that makes a difference? I doubt it would. I think jQuery is fast enough, but have you tried that?
We haven't, actually. That would be a really interesting thing to try. Yeah. The interesting thing, actually, one thing I have noticed, and I think I say roughly, I would say, my feeling is that, yeah, like you, it's very often it's the JavaScript enabled tests that we have problems with. And I've one approach we've taken in the past is trying to sandbox everything, because I was thinking that the network connections are causing this variation in timings. That didn't seem to lead to much improvement. But what I've noticed also is, and I've got blogs on a few of these, I've got so down on the, feeling so negative about the JavaScript things. There definitely actually have been a couple of occasions where I had what seemed like I thought were intermittently failing due to JavaScript, but were actually intermittently failing due to the way Ruby manages time things and the way that the tests were written, and like they're failing intermittently, not related to the JavaScript thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And I think that's ended up. It's been a bit of a danger thing. I've sort of checked myself in that it's easy, like whenever you get sort of what seems like intermittent failing, to kind of go, oh yes, it's JavaScript again. I've been caught out there kind of looking in the wrong places. That there definitely have been a few instances where it was something other than the JavaScript that caused the problem. Or, well, one thing that has been, the other example there was been really helpful is hooking up a debugger to, I don't know what to do with it, I forget now what it was with Selenium or what have you, but so I could get a JavaScript console, an interactive JavaScript console, coming through, like the access while the test is actually running. And that has allowed me to pick up, for example, a bug where I was using an ES6 JavaScript thing that wasn't working. So it wasn't actually like a JavaScript timing issue, which is what I definitely think that's still the majority of these cases. But so that's some techniques that have allowed us to get in there. I like your idea of maybe replacing jQuery with pure JavaScript. I definitely feel like there's a big part of the puzzle missing in my kind of mental model of what's going on with all of these things. I mean, there's been some good blog articles on the overall problem of this. I still feel that there must be something that we're missing. It feels like there should be some better approach. I feel bad about the idea that we're just going to give up on all of this, but there's, you know, in the same way that, like, I've got this diagram of the data architecture, I would like to see better kind of data architectural diagrams of what are all the moving parts when the JavaScript acceptance tests are running, and what is it that gets us stuck in these places, because we've got Capybara enabled to wait for things in the browser and so on, but yeah, I don't know if there's some other way we can look at it that would allow us to break through.
Mm-hmm.
Very frustrating.
Good thoughts.
Yeah, but bottom line, I think what we can't afford to do is to say that we can spend unlimited time working on our acceptance tests at the expense of actually delivering features to clients, or getting the code base, you know, set up correctly so that it can be developed and be built on in future.
Well, that's always the question. I do know that I've been tempted to skimp on tests, but tests have saved me. They've saved everybody on this conference, I think, so many times when you make an innocuous change and a test break, and oh yeah, there's that too. So thank you, tests, for pointing that out.
Yes.
It's always a balance.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think there the interesting question is then the balance between the different types of tests.
Yeah.
And so is it possible to replace some of our reliance on those more complex acceptance tests with intermediate integration tests or unit tests? And yeah, it's a balance to get. It's challenging, but great questions. And but apologies if I gave too much detail, but I think it's very common across many projects, isn't it? And Sigur's saying, yeah, first Cucumber test guided by Patrick. Thanks for hand-holding. Yes, Cucumber ones can often be a bit of a challenge. I love Cucumber, by the way, for even those people who don't particularly like it. So we've probably got time for another question or two, or thought or two, if anybody had anything else to mention on the subject of local support or any related things. Got a nice awesome there from Matt. I'll just go and check the. We've got our people who are watching on the stream who conceivably might be asking questions in the conference channel. But it looks like we're all good. I guess I'll just mention in closing then that what's sort of exciting about this project for me is the way that it does seem to connect with some of the work that we've started doing for the NHS, that's the UK's National Health Service, all to do with social prescribing, which is a lot about potentially doctors actually recommending people to go out and do volunteering as a way to sort of connect with people in the local community and sort of get various kind of health benefits. And so there are there's actually a lot of interest from different health groups and software companies about all of these APIs for getting information about charity organizations and volunteering opportunities. And yeah, there's the chance that our system will be integrated with that, with some of these bigger systems even further in the long run. There may be more funding to do that. And so, yeah, if people are inspired or interested by this data architecture thing, I think there's you know, a bright future for, you know, getting these different systems to work together with each other. All right. Well, that was your first presentation for the Azure Ventures Conference. That was local support. Do jump in if you want any help getting set up with the software, with the Rails stack. Then we've got all of that available there. The Pivotal Tracker board. Can I just say about that? Anybody can view it. I think if you're logged in, maybe my Firefox, and you can't see it. Oh no! Now that's interesting. You should actually be able to see that completely openly. I think I'll have to check. But unlike GitHub, some of our projects have got their sort of boards in Waffle, and anybody can add an issue. No, that's, you know, I guess it must be that. Oh, I guess I've got I've got the incorrect link in there. Oh, it's changed from N to S. There you go. Oh, I can just sort of fix that. But yes, anybody can view this. But if you'd like membership in here so that you can add comments to the tickets and so on, just reach out and ask, and get you set up. All right. There we go. That's our video presentation there. I'll just turn off the broadcast.